Hello and welcome to another edition of Blase Blah. This
Hey,
is Huge and I'm Steve.
do we need to introduce ourselves?
That's true.
Don't you know us now? All you viewers out there, those zero ones, is that a number? Zero's a number though, isn't it?
Zero is a
We're on the bar chart, success!
Zero is a number.
But anyways, Huge and Steve, and we're going to be talking about the recent murders and shootings and stabbings that's been happening in London, the UK. And we are... What do you think about this, Steve? All
Well,
these
we're
stabbings and
talking
shootings?
about it again because there was a death of a young woman called Tanisha Melbourne in Tottenham a few days ago. And she's the 50th person to be murdered in London this year. And we're only into start of April. So it's a big subject at the moment on the news and in people's thoughts. Where's it going to stop?
Yeah, I mean... what's happening?
I mean, I'm not putting responsibility on you to stop it.
Yeah.
But,
Well, I haven't got all the solutions, but this is just the decay of our inner cities, our working class poor communities, of poor black communities, yeah, which are kind of left behind. But there's it's not, you can't just blame the government in everything. But if we would have gone back, if we went back, 7 years ago? It's actually 7 years now. But since we had the riots in Tottenham,
it is 7 years, 2011. I was looking up the other day actually.
it's 7 years ago. And if we look back at that time, some of the children, not all of these guys that were rioting and stuff, but there's been a culture shift basically as well. Yeah, there's this. London has changed. It's affluent as hell as it's ever been, and in these pockets of like affluence and richness, you've got these poor communities that are historically disenfranchised from opportunities, and have been forgotten about, even from the riots before, from the 80s and riots, been totally forgotten about, and with lack of opportunities, lack of access to further education, you're going to have issues. You're going to have a level of decay. Now, also, there are elements of parts of culture that these communities and black communities we have to look at, and we got to look at elements where there's a high level of single parent mothers in that part of black community. I'm not saying it all black.
Yeah, and also just to come in there, I mean, there's a lot of great single parent families who don't end up in situations with children out on the streets with guns and knives.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's true. I mean, there's a lot of I've got loads of friends grew up in single parent mother homes, and they're fine. But quite a lot of it, life has been a struggle. It hasn't been a musical really trying to find yourself. And
Do you think though? Do you think that you can come from let's say basically from a family where you've got a mother and a father and the kids are brought up well, but do you think they can get sucked into this gang culture, irrelevant of their upbringing, if they're living in an area?
Of course, I mean there are occasions. I mean, but the statistics and stats and that is extremely little. Extremely less. I mean, if you look at young guys I have friends that work in prisons who do community, not community, but they've got programs that they work for themselves, and they've got their own programs to stop knife crimes and gangs, prevent young guys to go in gangs. And what this friend has told me, he said to me, there's patterns, and there is patterns. There's patterns in everything, and some of them you can tell by their names that they're called. They're named after old R&B stars kind of names and stuff, which is not a problem. But there's patterns in that. There's patterns in single parent mothers. The numbers of single parent mothers is just off the scales when you see young men getting into crime. You do need a dad. You need a dad at home. You need a dad at home. You need guidance.
You need a good dad at home.
Naturally, you need a good dad at home, but you need a dad at home to balance things out. Because a mother can't do it all. And I'm not blaming that. There's some great good mothers out there, but when you've got economical problems, when you're depressed and stressed and you're raising a family, you know, you just want to come home and you're working in a job that ain't paying you well, and all you want to do is just have release and rest, and you let your son just go out there with friends and different communities and you're in a poor community, and you just come home and you let your child go out there. You know, he or she, they're just going to get into situations.
What age do you think people are vulnerable to getting into these games? What age do you think it starts at?
Oh, it can start at any age, to be brutally honest with you. I mean, look, I don't come from a musical background. Yeah, as in everything being fantastic. This is what I've seen is when I was younger, there was in minority poor communities when there was a lack of opportunities in building, and in the 80s, we had older men on the road. Right, yeah. That were, you know, because they never had jobs, they never had access to opportunity. London, you know, was extremely racist back in the 80s, only just around the corner, extremely, still is institutionalised racism, but they never had jobs in the city. They never had, you know, access to these type of things. And what happened was when we were young and we were in our little groups, it wasn't gangs, they were just friends. They call these words gangs, it's just friends. It's not gangs. It's quite a lot of it is I just hang out with a whole bunch of friends. When they see a whole bunch of young black boys, they just say, "Oh, there's a gang."
Well,
no, it's not
true.
a gang.
If you see a group of white boys in Muswell Hill, they're not classed as a gang.
There's not a gang. You see some little middle class kids on skateboard. They're not a skateboard gang, are they? They're just friends. Yeah. So you got these boys who go again. Anyway, what I digress is that when I was younger, you had older guys that were on the street, but so they were a little bit more wiser. So when you was with your little friends and you'd be a bit wayward, they would correct you and say to you, "Hey, you know, what are you doing?" You know,
talking about sort of positive role models.
Well, they weren't role models in the same fact, but if you just went a bit too crazy and you looked up to them,
brought you into check a bit.
But this generation of young street kids, not really. I wish we weren't even talking about, because of that culture. This generation, this seems to be a far removed, and you know, the world's changing. So we've got these street kids, but guys that are in their late 20s, they're sort of like trying to get their life together because it's hard out here.
But what interests me as well is also, I mean, you've raised issues around.
So they've got no
economic issues.
Yeah, sorry.
No, about parenting. But I also psychologically, I'm always quite interested to think that these kids who are committing these gun crimes, do you think they're looking for a sort of false status? Do you think it gives them something that they can't get elsewhere? Does it raise their self-esteem in some sort of strange way? Because I heard as well that they have point scoring systems for this. So stabbing's worth, I don't know, 1 point, shooting's worth 2 points, a murder's worth 3 points, or whatever. And so do you think it gives them a strange sense of achievement?
Well, I don't know. I don't want to blow up that kind of way of thinking. Like, I've seen the videos, people doing this point scores and the mentality of these young kids and this and that. But to be honest with you, I don't think when we start talking about point scores, it starts getting into the realms of movie stuff. And I'm sure that there is some mentality. I'm sure they're not all thinking on that level. Yeah. You know, but what happens is you hear something and it sounds really interesting, like a really glamorous thing to add. Oh, it's a point score. It's like, you know, it's just like post-Cold Wars and stuff like that. It's like, oh, it's post-Cold Wars. We start thinking of movies and films and all these type of things where you see people, where you see movies and films and you look and you just, you know, like, you're not allowed to be in this area and stuff. And it just makes it more exciting, more, you know, and there are situations where that, but I don't think it's just that. I think there's different elements. People get into arguments, people wanting money, people, you know, fighting for little resources or whatever, or drugs or robbing. There's more than that. But when you start narrowing down, say, oh, it's a point score, it creates these people like they're animals and they're so dumb and crazy. But some days it just come down to desperation. And don't forget, this is going to be the first generation of poor minority kids that are not going to be able to buy a house. And not even poor minority kids, not rich middle class kids, but rich kids in general can't afford, working class kids of all colours can't afford to live in London. So they've got a little bit of extra stress and pressure and desperation.
I mean, what I find sort of quite disappointing when it comes to this with the government, because the only initiative the government seems to keep coming out with is talking about a ban on buying knives, which is completely going to like not make any difference at all. I mean, you can craft your own weapon. You know, if you suddenly couldn't buy knives anywhere, they would make their own weapons like they could do in prison, and that would become a trend, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
that's, to me, that's addressing it at the wrong end of the scale. You'll never, you can use a hammer. You can use so many things you can use that if you but what do you what I mean, my feelings is like, what responsibility has the government got on this? Where can they act positively and try to make some changes to this?
Well, after the riots in 2011, the government done a research. Then they did research when I could have told them. I'm sure they spent loads of. Could have told them in there. There are people feeling disenfranchised from opportunities and wealth, and we have to do more for these minority communities that feel left out of options or connections to building options. And then what they did, they just gentrified those communities. They've done absolutely nothing.
So you don't think coffee shops have helped?
I don't think cappuccino coffee shops have helped, and expensive pubs and million building projects that have helped those poor communities. So they've kind of left them behind and just thought, if we just gentrify the damn place, they'll be gone.
So it's a superficial thing, isn't it?
Superficial. It's a full sense of it's a full sense of inclusion to the opportunities that are out there, and it's visually appealing, but underneath it, there's it's very gritty and there's no opportunities for these. So those same communities, people from those communities, they're the ones that are stabbing and killing each other like crazy. So it's decaying in itself. But also, we got to take responsibility. Caribbean black community, but in all, we all need to be taking risks because they're all part of our culture. We need to be taking and looking into these. Not regardless whether they're black or white. We need to be looking. It's decaying. They're our children. They are in desperation and poverty. But we need to look at parenting. We need to be looking at parenting. We need to be looking right now, which is crazy because of the stop and search. They want to bring in stop and search more. I think they need to bring in stop and search just for the meantime, because people are getting stabbed up.
The trouble is, it's going to go back to what we had before, isn't it? Because the people that are going to stop and search are obviously going to be groups of young black youths.
Well, under the circumstances that we're at, and I'm surprised I'm saying this. We got death rows, the deaths are rising. We need to say, you know what? We need to stop as many youths as possible. Humanely. For the next few months, so we can start thinking of solutions. And because so those guys that are running around with knives and guns on it, they're going to be like, you know what? I'm not going to carry my knife.
Do you think they can make that initiative work without being?
No, I don't think that's the solution. I just think...
No, I didn't mean that. Yeah, I mean, do you think in the midterm, do you think they can actually fulfil stop and search in a non-biased way and make it?
No, but under these circumstances, under the circumstances we're in, is they're going to. I mean, they're going to have to profile to a certain degree. This is when it comes to it's like, you know what, kids are dying. So if we can just say, okay, and I don't like to. It sounds crazy. I can't believe I'm even saying. Anyone can wear a hoodie and whatever, but if we've got certain groups of kids that are walking around when it's a sunny day with hoodies on. With trousers hanging down to their pants, walking around the street in mass groups, then you know what, we need under the circumstances, you might have to stop them for now, because if you don't stop that and just say, excuse me guys,
it does create a stereotype. For example, because one of my nephews dresses like that.
Yeah, but he's not going to get absolutely. But it's not the death rate is not white kids getting stabbed up and getting killed.
No, but he could be a black kid dressing like that.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's some good black kids walking around, but some black kids. I'm not being funny. If your trousers and your arse is hanging out, in that level of stereotype, and again, if your bum is hanging out, and you're trying to tap into that fashion of bum, then you know what?
Do you think it's a necessary evil?
You've got your child shouldn't be walking around with his arse hanging out, and so you're gonna have to stop and. If 99% of they start realizing kids that are walking around with their arse hanging out and hoodies on and their arse hanging out. In this range of that are usually the children that are having that. Then you know what? You got to tell police, don't be wearing your trousers hanging down. There's possibilities you might get stopped. Don't be walking around on a hot sunny day with hoodies on. I'm so it's got to an alarm. It's only because it's an alarming situation.
It is an alarming figure. I mean,
so we've got to stop. What we're going to wait and say? Let's not stop people. Wait for another till the end of the year, and then there's another 50, 60 deaths.
Well, it'll be about, based on this, it'd be about another 200-300.
Yeah, you got to get militant. We've got to do something until we can start grasping the solutions, and we need to also the government. Where I didn't want to blame the government,
Yeah, okay.
but also there've been cuts in communities, in poor communities,
Yeah.
in community centres. There's cuts in
that is
things
correct.
to educate young
Yeah.
kids, and that there's
Yeah.
been massive cuts
Yeah, that's
in the
correct.
last 5-10 years. So all of these things, decay. There's cuts in sports. We got the Olympics. They're doing cuts in sports. So imagine you get those kids. Because I apologise. I'm getting a bit passionate here. I was living in a bubble. When I play basketball occasionally, I need sometimes, but when I go play basketball, when I was younger, we were kind of rough and really, in basketball. So I was like, I came back to my partner. I said, you know what, the kids today are so polite and lovely, and I'm like, they're just different from when I was younger. They were actually the guys who were playing basketball. They were quite nice kids.
Yeah, okay.
And I realised, you know what it is? Because they're playing basketball, because they're into sports. So, they've got something that's keeping their mind occupied.
Can I ask you, what age do you think you need to sort of grab these kids to sort of nip it in the bud? I mean,
you need to grab them at 10, 11.
That's what I would say.
11, 12. You need to grab them when they're going to secondary school. 11, 12, because they're trying to find themselves who they are. So once you start thinking about who they are, even my daughter, she's trying to be maturer and she's only 11, and I'm like, okay, so we need to pay attention. I need to pay attention to what she's absorbing now, what kind of social friends she has, and
because once they even go to us 12, 13, their thoughts become concrete, and it's very hard to like change their views. They look to their peer groups who they believe sort of right, as opposed to their parents. It's you're right. You need to nip it in the bud at a much younger age. And do you think government should be playing more money back into community centres and youth services to try and help that?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's one. I mean, it's not one solution, but it will help absolutely if you create in those extreme, because they are extreme. They're not. That's not black culture. That's just the poor part of black culture. So a really poor part of people that are desperate, that are black.
Well, no, exactly. You don't have drive-by shootings in Surrey, do you?
No, absolutely. But we don't look and see like up north, like some drunk things and some guy, white guy, I don't know, killing, like drunk and fighting each other. We don't say that's white culture, do we? I mean, they coming out of pubs staggering and fighting people. I was that's white culture. So the poor black culture.
It's true actually, because up north they class that as working class culture, wouldn't they? Up north, but here they class it as
trash.
Or chavs. But here, that's not great either. Is it? So,
but we look and start saying about, these are poor people in the black community. They're the poor ones, where their parents, their mums might not be educated. They're trying to do the best they can. So we really need to look at that and start looking about poverty. Start looking about parenting classes, and also there's got to be situations where the parents have got to take responsibility for that. They've got to. If your child's going around causing problems and and you're at court every week.
You got to try.
Yeah, it's going to be like, we're going to find your ass as well because you're the parent. But it depends if the child's
sometimes you've got parents who aren't good role models. Maybe taking drugs themselves, drinking heavily.
Yeah. You've got all those problems. You've got a different situation, but I don't know right now. Quick solutions, just to round everything up. We need to get police gonna have to do stop and search. I'm sorry, I can't believe I'm saying that.
They're gonna have to. It's gone for like a full circle. It's come around, isn't it? Back to the.
But they're decaying. It's just this is what you have a level of decaying because they're even going around robbing people on scooters because the level is a point. They wasn't doing that.
Well, the scooter thing's like the Wild West now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the Wild West.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Because these are the same people that are doing the scooters, are the same people who are doing the stabbings and stuff. Because they're desperate like shit, and they're decaying. They start decaying and start stabbing each other and arguing. They have a low self-esteem. We need education. We need to help these people in the communities. They're disenfranchised. Their parents were disenfranchised. Their parents' were disenfranchised. So they're just and there's a negative culture that they're in. We need to do some changes in there.
So to sum up, you stop and search. You think
stop
more in this from the government.
For the meanwhile, we're going to have to up the stop and search. The government's going to have to start looking about implementing things in these poor communities. We need to start stopping certain kids on scooters, even kids driving around on scooters, just for the next 6 months. Until we can get our hands and our minds around our solution. We need to and you know what? We need more black leaders who are for the poor and for black communities to be speaking up. and to be coming out. Where's all the football players that who were possibly, if they weren't kicking football, they might have been in those communities?
Point, actually.
Where are they?
The footballers could make a lot
young
of
football
impact.
players. If they weren't kicking football, I'm not being funny. The way they talk, you know, they'd probably be in the same social circles as well. Where were they with their big money and their big cash?
Have a big influence. So I think kids would look up to those sort of guys.
Of course they will. They need to get, the footballers need to start coming towards it. Not just black football players, but white football players as well, because they're all working class.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
They weren't playing kicking football. They'd be fucking robbing banks, stabbing people.
On scooters.
Huh?
Out on scooters.
Yeah, they'd be driving around on scooters, robbing people's phones. And I'm just stereotyping in a certain way, but you understand what I'm talking about.
We take this very seriously, and
it's a very serious thing.
Sad.
It's very sad
because you know what I always find quite poignant is the fact that apart from the victims and the people that killed, but the kids that are in prison for these crimes for 20, 30 years at the age of like 17. I mean, that's your whole adolescence. Your 20s and your 30s wiped out.
Do they? I mean, I'm sure they do, but do they? I've got to look at these sentences. Do they actually get 20 and 30 years now? These days, like they get like 10 years and shit like that.
Could be right.
They come out in like 4 years. You know, it's not. They're not.
I think it's a bit longer than for that. But
Probably so. I know somebody who got killed, and the murder came out 7 years after they killed him.
It can happen. But I mean, even to lose 10 years from the age of 17 to 20, I mean, they're the best times of your life in a way, aren't they?
Certainly are.
Your late teens, early 20s.
But they don't know. They really don't know. I mean, they say youth is wasted on the young.
Well, that's very true, yeah.
So, but anyway, listen, we hope things get better, and we hope we can start looking at some.
Come on, Teresa, you need to have your input as well out there. So
Teresa's just for the elite, mate. To be honest with you,
well,
she's not
doing
that.
That's not what she said when she started.
Oh, she really cares.
Anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you on the next edition of Blase Blah.
See you soon.
All they know is Blase, Blase, Blah, Blah. Blase, Blah.